Once upon a time, in the lush and sprawling kingdom of Elien, nestled between misty mountains and sapphire seas, there lived a prince named Corin. Born as the only child to King Aldrin and Queen Sira, Corin was beloved by the people even as a boy. He had a gentle demeanor, curious eyes, and a voice that calmed storms in the hearts of many. Yet despite all the hopes pinned on him, Corin harbored a secret: he never wanted to be king. From the time he was old enough to understand the weight of a crown, he felt its heaviness pressing down on him. While his tutors spoke of lineage, duty, and legacy, Corin longed for open skies, for stories, for simplicity. He would sneak out of the palace with a cloak pulled over his golden-brown curls and wander the villages, listening to tales of fishermen, bakers, and shepherds. He learned the names of stars from old sailors and how to whistle like a bird from children who had never worn shoes. His father, King Aldrin, was a ruler of strong will and iron judgment. He saw the crown as a sacred burden, one that must be borne with pride and vigilance. "You were born to lead, Corin," he would say, pacing the war room with maps strewn across the table. "The kingdom does not wait for those who hesitate." His mother, softer in manner, still held fast to tradition, reminding Corin daily that duty often stands in the way of desire. But Corin could not bend his heart. He loved his people, truly, but not from the throne. He loved them in the quiet hours of dusk, sitting beside farmers over a jug of cider, or laughing with children as they chased fireflies. He wrote poetry. He played the lute. He spent long hours painting the changing colors of Elien's coast. He wanted a life of feeling, not ruling. As Corin approached his 21st birthday, the day loomed when he would be officially declared heir to the throne. The court buzzed with excitement. Nobles arrived from across the realm. His father commissioned a sword to be forged in his honor, named Verdance, symbolizing the promise of growth under Corin's future reign. But 3 days before the ceremony, Corin vanished. He left no note, no trail, only a single book of poems and a feather quill resting beside his untouched royal garments. The kingdom was thrown into chaos. The king dispatched riders to every corner of Elien, threatening war on any who dared harbor his son. But Corin had disappeared beyond the reach of even the most loyal scouts. In truth, Corin had gone east, beyond the forests of Evervale, where Elien's influence thinned and the wild world whispered its welcome. He shed his name and became simply Cori, a traveling bard. He sang songs in taverns, fixed roofs in small towns, and fell in love with the world as it was, imperfect, kind, and breathtakingly free. For years, Elien waited. Kingship passed to Aldrin's brother after the king fell ill from grief. The people mourned the loss of their gentle prince, assuming him dead or stolen by fate. But every so often, a traveler would return from distant lands with tales of a golden-haired minstrel whose voice could silence even the rowdiest of crowds, a man who listened more than he spoke and helped without asking for thanks. One day, decades later, a girl named Lyra arrived at the palace. She claimed to be a healer from the Far East, with no ties to nobility. She requested only a place to work and rest. But when she sang to the palace children in the garden, the queen, old now with snow-white hair, felt something stir in her memory. "You have your father's voice," she whispered one afternoon. Lyra smiled. "He said you would remember it." And so the secret returned. Corin had lived a long life away from the palace, falling in love with a healer and raising a daughter beneath wild stars. He had never returned, never claimed the throne, and never regretted it. But he had told Lyra, when she was old enough to choose her own path, that she could visit the land that might have been hers. Not to rule, but to know where she came from. The court offered Lyra a seat at their table. She refused it kindly. "I carry his name in my heart," she said, "but not on my shoulders. He taught me that our lives belong to us, not to expectation." And with that, she left. In time, Corin's tale became legend, the prince who gave up a kingdom for freedom. Some called him a coward, others a sage. But those who understood, truly understood, knew that he had ruled in a way no king ever could, with compassion, with humility, and with the courage to walk away. And so the story of Prince Corin lived on, not in stone statues or golden thrones, but in songs sung by wandering bards, and in quiet hearts that dared to dream of lives of their own choosing. Years had passed since Lyra, daughter of Prince Corin, walked the marble halls of Elion's palace. She had returned to the quiet eastern town where she was born, where the sea met the cliffs in a spray of wildflowers and gulls. She lived simply, as her parents had, healing wounds, telling stories, and raising her own son, Cale, with the same quiet wisdom Corin once gave her. But peace, as always, is a fragile thing. Far to the north, the kingdom of Dralen, once Elion's ally, began to stir with unrest. A warlord named Harvek had seized power, turning the realm into a militarized machine, driven by conquest. Villages on Elion's border were raided. The High Council scrambled to respond, and the current king, an aging cousin of Corin, grew frail and indecisive. Word spread fast in a land still longing for strong leadership. Whispers turned to rumors. If only Corin had stayed. If only his line ruled now. Where is the blood of Aldrin? One evening, 2 cloaked riders arrived at Lyra's cottage. She stood in the doorway, her hair tied back, her sleeves rolled up, hands still stained with tinctures. She looked older now, not old, but seasoned by time. Her son Cale watched from the corner, clutching a wooden sword he had carved himself. "Lady Lyra," said the taller of the two, pulling back his hood. "By the authority of the crown of Elion, we ask you to return." She narrowed her eyes. "I told you once before, I carry my father's name in my heart, not on my shoulders." "This isn't about a throne," the rider replied. "It's about the kingdom. Our people need hope. If you won't lead, then at least stand beside us. Show them that the bloodline still lives." Lyra turned her gaze to Cale, who looked up at her with curiosity, not fear. "My father never wanted a crown," she said quietly. "He believed power should never be taken by those who crave it." The second rider, younger, spoke for the first time. "And that's why we need you." Reluctantly, Lyra agreed to return. But not as a queen, and not as a symbol. She came back as a healer, a voice of reason in a court that had grown frantic. Where generals spoke of war, she spoke of peace. Where nobles saw only politics, she reminded them of people. Cale, barely 12, watched his mother stand before the council and command silence with nothing more than a calm word. In time, her presence stirred something long dormant in Elion's soul. She didn't wear robes of state or speak from thrones. She walked the markets, sat with the wounded, helped bury the dead when conflict reached their borders. And slowly, something changed. The people began to rally, not under banners but under values. They remembered Prince Corin not as the ruler they lost, but as the man who taught them that leadership begins with service, not command. Cale grew as boys do. But unlike his mother or grandfather, he didn't speak of avoiding power. Instead, he asked what it might look like to reshape it. He trained in diplomacy, history, and medicine, not because it was expected of him, but because he saw a future where kings were not distant figures in towers, but stewards of the people. And when Elion finally turned the tide against Dralen with careful alliances and not brute force, it was Cale, young, idealistic, and fiercely thoughtful, who brokered the peace that ended the bloodshed. He never called himself king. The council offered him the crown once. He declined it with a smile. "I will not sit where my grandfather refused to," he said. "But I will serve. Not above the people, among them." And so, a new era was born in Elion, one not ruled by monarchs, but by leaders chosen for their wisdom, not their birthright. A council of voices, many and diverse, with Lyra at its heart and Cale as its guiding light. The legacy of the prince who never wanted to be king did not end with him. It echoed, stronger than any crown, in the voices of those who followed. And in the quiet villages, when the moon hung low and the sea whispered to the cliffs, travelers still told tales of Corin, the bard prince, the gentle heart, and the daughter who turned a legend into a future.